It was supposed to be an ordinary night, the kind that fades into memory without leaving a mark. Streetlights hummed softly, windows glowed with familiar warmth, and somewhere in the distance a television played to an empty room. No one sensed that by morning, an entire community would be holding its breath, asking the same question over and over again: how could something so heartbreaking happen so quietly? Her name was Emily Carter, 27 years old, kind, dependable, and invisible in the way that good people often are. She lived alone in a small apartment at the edge of the city, a place she chose because it felt safe and predictable. Emily believed in routines: morning coffee at the same cafe, evening walks at the same hour, messages to her mother every night before sleep. To the outside world, her life was calm, almost uneventful, but sometimes the most devastating stories hide behind lives that seem perfectly normal. On the evening she was killed, Emily finished work late. Her co-workers remembered her smiling as she said goodbye, apologizing for leaving in a rush. She had mentioned a headache. Nothing serious. The security camera near the parking lot captured her walking to her car, adjusting her coat, completely unaware that this was the last clear image of her alive. The footage showed nothing unusual, no shadows following her, no sudden movement, just a young woman heading home. When Emily didn't respond to her mother's usual late-night text, it caused a flicker of concern, but nothing more. By morning, the concern had grown into panic. Calls went unanswered, messages stayed unread. Her mother contacted the apartment manager, who agreed to check on her. What he found behind that closed door would haunt him for the rest of his life. Emily was lying on the floor of her living room. The apartment showed no signs of forced entry. Nothing was broken. Nothing was stolen. It looked as if time itself had paused, leaving behind a single, unbearable moment. The silence in that room was louder than any scream. Police arrived quickly, sealing off the building as neighbors gathered outside, whispering in disbelief. People who had waved at Emily in passing now struggled to process that she was gone. Detectives walked through the apartment slowly, carefully, noting every detail: a half-finished cup of tea on the counter, her phone placed neatly beside the couch, shoes by the door, exactly where she always left them. This was not the scene of chaos. This was the scene of trust. The autopsy revealed the truth. Everyone feared, but no one wanted to say out loud. Emily had been murdered. The cause was deliberate and personal. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't random violence. Whoever did this had been close enough to her to enter without fear, close enough to take her life without leaving a trace of struggle. As news spread, shock turned into grief. Her mother arrived in the city that same day, collapsing into tears outside the apartment building. Friends described Emily as gentle, thoughtful, and cautious. She didn't take risks. She didn't invite trouble into her life, which made the question even more painful: who could have wanted her dead? Detectives began retracing Emily's final days. They interviewed co-workers, friends, neighbors, anyone who might have crossed her path. Most described the same person: quiet, friendly, private. Emily wasn't hiding anything, but she also wasn't sharing much. There were no known enemies, no recent arguments, no history of violence. Her phone records showed nothing alarming: no threatening messages, no desperate calls for help. Then there was the detail that changed everything. A neighbor mentioned seeing someone enter Emily's apartment the night she died. Not a stranger, but someone who walked in confidently, without knocking. Someone who belonged there. The description was vague, but it confirmed what investigators already suspected. Emily had known her killer. Attention turned to the people closest to her. A former boyfriend who insisted they were on good terms. A co-worker who had grown unusually attached. A childhood friend who had recently reconnected. Each interview added pieces to the puzzle, but none of them fit together cleanly. Everyone had an alibi. Everyone expressed shock. Everyone said the same thing: Emily was safe. Emily was careful. Emily would never let the wrong person into her home. But the evidence told a different story. Subtle marks suggested a confrontation, not violent but emotional. A conversation that had gone terribly wrong. Investigators believed Emily had trusted the person standing in front of her, right up until the moment she realized she shouldn't have. As days turned into weeks, the case consumed the city. Candlelight vigils were held outside her building. Her photo appeared on news screens, her smile frozen in time. People who had never met her felt her loss deeply, because Emily could have been anyone. A sister, a friend, a daughter, someone just like them. Behind closed doors, detectives felt the weight of pressure growing heavier. They had a victim everyone cared about, and a crime that made no sense. No clear motive, no weapon found, no forced entry, just a young woman whose life had ended where she felt safest. Then, buried deep in Emily's digital history, they found something small but unsettling. A series of messages she had deleted just days before her death. Messages from someone who knew her routines, her fears, her loneliness, someone who spoke gently, almost lovingly, but whose words carried an edge of desperation. It wasn't a threat, it was a warning disguised as affection. The realization hit hard. This wasn't a crime of sudden rage. This was something that had been building quietly, patiently, in the background of Emily's life. While she was living, laughing and planning her future, someone else was watching, waiting and convincing themselves that they had a right to her. And as detectives closed in on the truth, one thought became impossible to ignore. Emily hadn't just been murdered. She had been betrayed, and the person responsible was closer than anyone could have imagined. The messages led investigators to a name they had already heard before, but hadn't fully focused on. Daniel Moore, a co-worker from Emily's office. Someone who sat just a few desks away, shared lunch breaks, offered rides home on rainy days. To most people, Daniel was forgettable. Quiet, polite, reliable. The kind of person you stop noticing because he never causes trouble. And that, detectives realized too late, was exactly how he wanted it. Daniel had met Emily 2 years earlier, when she joined the company. At first, their interactions were ordinary. Friendly conversations, small jokes, casual support during stressful workdays. But over time, Daniel's interest deepened into something darker. He began paying attention to things Emily never meant to share. What time she left work, which days she stayed late, when she seemed tired or emotionally drained. In his mind, he wasn't observing her. He was protecting her. Emily, on the other hand, had noticed the change. She had felt the discomfort growing slowly, the way it often does. Nothing dramatic enough to report, nothing aggressive enough to confront, just a sense that Daniel was always nearby, always listening a little too closely. She had started pulling away, responding less, keeping conversations short. To Daniel, that distance felt like rejection, and rejection felt unbearable. When detectives brought Daniel in for questioning, he appeared calm, almost too calm. He spoke respectfully about Emily, describing her as kind and special. He claimed they were just friends. But when investigators showed him the deleted messages, something shifted. His voice tightened, his words became defensive. He insisted Emily misunderstood him, that she had led him on, that she owed him honesty. That was the moment detectives knew they were close. The night Emily was killed, Daniel had told police he was home alone, but digital evidence told a different story. His phone placed him near Emily's apartment. During the exact window of time investigators believed the murder occurred. Security cameras from a nearby store showed his car passing through the area, headlights cutting through the darkness like a silent confession. Confronted with the evidence, Daniel's composure cracked. He admitted going to Emily's apartment, claiming he only wanted to talk. He said she had invited him, that she had been upset, that he was trying to help. But when asked why he had deleted messages, why he had lied about his location, why Emily ended up dead, his answers fell apart. The truth came out slowly, painfully. Daniel had gone to Emily's apartment unannounced. She had opened the door because she trusted him, because she didn't believe he was dangerous. Inside, the conversation turned emotional. Emily told him she wanted distance, that she needed space, that whatever he thought was happening between them was never real. To Daniel, those words felt like the collapse of a world he had built entirely in his head. What happened next lasted only minutes, but the consequences would last forever. In a moment of desperation and loss of control, Daniel took Emily's life. There was no dramatic struggle, no loud screams, just shock, confusion, and then silence. Afterward, he placed her phone neatly by the couch, straightened the room, and walked out, convinced he could erase what he had done. He was wrong. Daniel was arrested and charged with murder. As the case moved to trial, Emily's family sat in the courtroom day after day, listening to the details they could never unhear. Her mother held on to a photograph of Emily as a child, smiling and unaware of the future waiting for her. Each testimony reopened wounds that would never fully heal. Daniel showed little emotion during the trial. He spoke about loneliness, about feeling invisible, about believing Emily was the only person who understood him. But the court saw through the excuses. Loneliness was not a justification. Obsession was not love, and nothing could excuse what he had taken. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, there was no sense of victory, only grief, only emptiness. A life sentence could never balance the loss of a life filled with potential, kindness, and quiet dreams. Emily's apartment was eventually cleaned and rented to someone new. Her desk at work was cleared, her favorite coffee order went unclaimed. Life, as it always does, moved forward, but the people who loved her were left with a permanent absence. Birthdays that would never be celebrated, messages that would never be answered. A future erased by someone who refused to accept the word no. This case remains one of the most heartbreaking, not because of brutality but because of its familiarity. Because it reminds us that danger does not always arrive with violence or warning. Sometimes it comes with a smile, with patience, with someone who believes they are entitled to another person's life. Emily Carter was not reckless. She was not careless. She was human, and her story serves as a quiet warning that trust, once broken in the most final way, leaves behind a silence that echoes far beyond a single room. Somewhere tonight, someone is walking home under streetlights that hum softly. Someone is sending a final message before sleep. Someone believes tomorrow will be ordinary, and most of the time it is, but every once in a while, an ordinary night becomes a tragedy that no one ever forgets.